following preview was begrudgingly approved for all audiences.
You're listening to Elevator Music.
Welcome to Forward Thinking, presented by the Professional Collegiate League. I'm Ricky Vellante, and I'll be joined by my co-host David West shortly. As usual, we'll be welcoming guests challenging the status quo, doing social good, and bringing about positive change to the world, while also talking a little bit of sports. In this episode, we are joined by two special guests, Coach Alan Major and former number 1 overall pick of the 2007 NBA draft, Greg Oden. As was reported earlier this week, Alan and Greg have accepted coaching positions with the PCL. Alan will be serving as the head coach of our DC Stealth, and Greg will be joining him on his staff as an assistant coach. So we're excited to bring this conversation to you guys and give you an opportunity to get to know Greg and Alan a little bit better beyond what obviously was included in their bios and in our press release and on the website. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe Forward Thinking on your favorite podcast platform and the PCL YouTube channel. You can get more information on the PCL at thepcleague.com/forwardthinking. You can also find us on Twitter at @the_PC League and on Instagram at the PC League. We hope you enjoy the episode. And welcome back to Forward Thinking. I'm Ricky Vellante, joined by my co-host David West. We have with us two special guests today, Coach Alan Major and former number 1 overall pick and NBA veteran Greg Oden. Alan, Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Just starting off, how have you guys been doing throughout the pandemic? How have you been keeping busy? You know, how's everything with y'all's families and everything?
You go first, G. You got a little one to chase around, so you got more content on that question, brother.
I wouldn't say all that. You already said it all. I got a 4-year-old. That's what I'm doing. But everything's good. I spent a lot of time actually talking with Mage, just talking basketball to keep my mind sharp during the pandemic. But other than that, just spending time with the family and the pandemic's good for me. I've become more of a homebody.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I got some family here in Indianapolis, so it's been great to reconnect with them, and just been watching some synergy, tracking games. I'm sure like Greg, whether it's pro and college, and it's been tough to kind of really go see guys. Normally, I try to go watch a lot of guys in person as far as practices and things like that, whether it's college or pro. But everybody's had to kind of shut their facilities down, so that part's been tough to really not dip in and see some people, But other than that, just riding this thing out.
Right. Just so our audience gets familiar, can you guys give a little bit of background? We usually start with a little bit of background on, on our guests. And I mean, Coach, you can start because I think people might be familiar with Greg, but just give our audience a general background of where you come from.
Yeah, born in Indianapolis, Indiana, so this is my hometown. Went to high school here in the city, and then went to Purdue actually with the hope of being a walk-on. And then my high school coach, about 3 weeks before our season ended in my senior year, we had the truth-telling session where he was basically like, "Look, if the walk-on thing doesn't happen, you better be ready to leave your pride in that dorm and see if they'll let you do something that'll allow you to be in the belly of the beast on a daily basis." So they had one when I went through a tryout, 6:30 in the morning, 11 guys showed up. They just tried to crack us open and see who was left standing. They kept one kid, Marvin Ray, who had played at Gary Roosevelt High School. And they just wanted him to harass the senior point guard that was coming back that year and just work on him every day. And so that was the end of it right there. Went back, and they had one manager spot left. And so I took it. And that was just a way to as that's what my high school coach called it, get up in the belly of the beast. So graduated in 92. My first gig was actually out on the West Coast of all places. I was a GA at a small Division III school called California Lutheran University. I'm not Lutheran, but the job was open. I took it and worked for a guy named Mike Dunlap. I'm sure you guys have heard of him. He was in the NBA for a stretch and was head coach at Metro State Division II. They won a national championship. So I was there for 3 years. Went to a place called University Pacific which is up in Stockton, and was fortunate enough to coach a guy there named Michael Olowokandi, who was in the NBA. Went from an improbable, out of nowhere guy that he came from London with really not much skill at all, and then 3 years later, he's the number one pick in the '98 draft, and so was fortunate to work with him. Went to Southern Illinois for 1 year, went back to Pacific, and then knocked heads with Dave at Xavier after that in Cincinnati, and was there for 3 years, and then followed Coach Mata to Ohio State for 6 years, and then was head coach at Charlotte for 5 years. So the last two recent gigs I've had, I went back to Ohio State from 2016 to 17, and Coach Mata's last year as a player development spot, and then 2 years ago went to University of Texas to do the same thing with the women's staff. And the coach there was a former women's coach at Charlotte, so we knew each other pretty well. And just a chance to see what the women's side was like. She had a young staff and wanted some experience. So anyway, it was interesting being around females in that capacity, but it made me a better coach.
What about you, Greg?
So I guess my history is, from Indiana. Well, born in Buffalo, New York, raised in Indianapolis. Played high school ball in Indianapolis, won 3 state championships. Then I went to the Ohio State University. Mind what happened earlier on this week, where Coach Mage coached me for a season in '07, drafted to the Portland Trail Blazers. Was there for 5 years. Took a year off because of multiple injuries. Then played with the Heat in 2013 and played in China for the Jiangsu Dragons in 2014, 2015, and recently played in the Big Three. Last year we didn't have a league, but 2 years ago I played for the A-League. Had fun just getting back out there and playing basketball. But currently have been doing some financial literacy for a company called Educore as an athlete advisor.
Yeah, so Greg, I guess I'll ask my next question towards you. You said you bounced around a little bit, obviously, after being a number one pick. What were some of the differences between playing in the NBA versus China versus then getting the opportunity to play in Ice Cube's Big Three?
Well, the biggest thing in China, they want you to score. When you're over there, you're the foreign guy. So, like for me, being the big and number one pick, I'm getting triple teamed, and I pass it out to my teammate, and they're yelling at me like I did something wrong. I'm passing to the open man. What's going on? So, China, if you're not averaging 20, 30, they really kind of look down at you a little bit. But it was a great experience. It was something I never had to do. Sitting in the exit row on the plane with 3 7-footers right next to each other. We like, come on, you can't get us in first class. The league was great. Playing in Portland, I had my ups and downs with, my knees and a bunch of surgeries. But, that experience and playing under Coach Nate was something, that I will always cherish. I learned so much. I was just young at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. And but I really do appreciate those times playing with Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge. But then playing in Miami, LeBron's last year there, and that was the first time I seen championship preparation, how these guys handled themselves every day. That experience and being around that championship organization was something that, kind of takes my mind into being the coach every day. I think about that year when I was with the Heat.
Mm-hmm.
What were your takeaways from your time in Portland? Because, I'll say this to you. I don't think I've ever said this to you, but I remember you healthy. Because remember 1 year, I told Coach Mays this. We played you like 3 times in the first month, and like that was like your healthy stretch. You were really healthy, and I remember saying to myself, like, this dude is a fucking load, and he's gonna be a problem.
Yeah,
and remember
that was double healthy.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and I was really taken back by how big you were, how bouncy you were, and I've told people this. I believe that if you had stayed healthy, man, there would be no small ball. I think you were the reason why the small ball evolved was because there was no big like you in the league. Now I remember that year we played. I think we played 2 or 3 times in the first month. We just got the games out of the way, and you were in Portland and then back in New Orleans, and I'm like, man, if this dude and y'all had LA and B Roy, like an unbelievable team. I just remember that, and just for me, I wanted you to hear that. But my question is more so, what were you thinking? What are your thoughts right now as a guy who's out of it? I know you said you were young when you were in Portland, and then you got some championship experience in Miami. But what are your thoughts looking back on it now, saying like what you may have done different? Now, I know you can't change injuries, but aside from the injuries, what would you have done different?
Well, first, I want to say I appreciate that because you never smiled whenever we did play. But
hey, man, I coached the dude 3 years. He smiled twice, so don't feel bad.
It's the most I've seen him smile ever on this. No, but I would say the biggest takeaway I got is the mentality. At that young age, you're just going out there and playing. You're not understanding, coach wants to make it to where Brandon's going off, LaMarcus going off, and then you can come in and help out as well. Their game plan and making sure everybody's getting a touch and everybody feels a part of the team. I really didn't understand that at that young age. I was just like, I need the ball a little bit more, or, they're doing their thing. I understand we're friends and all, but, how do you game plan when you got potential superstars on your team? Who gets this time, who does what? And I just think that mentality on and off the court actually was something that I didn't have in Portland. Just being a young kid trying to enjoy life, but not understanding that once you get to this level in the NBA, it's all about basketball. You got to do everything you can to be the best player on the court. And that comes from doing stuff off the court too, sacrificing going out to go get some extra shots in a couple of times a week. Just the little things like that. I wish I would have been better at, or I wish I would have took, that advice a little bit more to heart. That's what I got in Portland.
Good deal.
Yeah, Coach Mage. So you mentioned Olawa Candy. Obviously, these two gentlemen here you also coached as well. What's it like, especially as a younger guy, when you had Olawa Candy and David, to have that caliber of talent on your team? Like, do you feel challenged in any way to step up as a coach in that situation?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it makes you better, and that's something that Coach Mata used to call a partnership, meaning that great players put a healthy pressure back on coaches to have to improve. And I would be calling, Dave doesn't know this. I mean, we talked about it since, but at the time he probably didn't know that, I was calling NBA people, between his junior, and senior year, just to try to get some information like, hey, how can I, knowing that the path he's headed, he's going to be in your league, what kind of skill does he need to develop? And we tried to plug some of those things in, while he was still in college. And so every time he would improve and take a step, then the pressure's back on me, because the worst thing that can happen is you walk in the gym and you don't give them anything and they don't feel challenged. So the best way to challenge them is, I had to challenge myself. And so their growth made me grow. Same with Greg. I mean, Greg's the type of dude, you'd say something about a footwork thing, and then 3 weeks later, he'll come back and say, hey, coach, you remember that footwork thing we were talking about 3 weeks, and I'd kind of look at him like, ooh, had to kind of jog my own memory because his memory was that good and he was that sharp. And so those guys are a blessing to your career because they challenge you to improve. Same with Big Mike. I mean, he didn't know where the block was the day he stepped off the plane from London and came to Pacific's campus. He shot free throws, knock-kneed, where his knees knocked together. So, those guys, they really put the pressure on you every day, but it's a good kind of pressure because anytime you get better as a coach, all you're going to do is turn around and give that development back to them.
What are your thoughts about the way the game is sort of shifted now? So you're talking about, you coached a guy like Olawa Candy, you coached Big Greg, myself, and I'm not a true big, like they are really real. They were real big.
Yeah, no, big, yeah, different big, yeah.
So what are your thoughts about the game today and sort of the role of bigs in the game today?
I think the big thing about bigs now is not so much how you score. That's part of it. I think the big thing now with bigs is who are you going to guard?
Right.
Like I look at a guy like Luka Garza and as phenomenal a year as he's having.
Right.
I have questions still about he's going to have to step away from that rim and chase people around.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys watched the Texas game the other night, but I thought Jericho Sims made some money in that game because he had to switch out and he had to guard Mac McClung. He had to switch out and guard Terrence Shannon multiple times throughout the game, not just one-offs. I'm talking about switches where he's on an island, 3, 4, 5 dribbles, and he's got to just make guys take tough shots, and he did it multiple times. Right. So I think a guy like that has value right out of the jump, because obviously he's big enough to rim protect and all those things. But then the second thing I think is just guys have to be really good now at finishing on the move. There's very few old school back to the basket guys out there anymore. And now it's about creating action through pick and roll. And now how do you finish as a roller? Do you finish at the rim with a lob dunk? Right. Do you finish with a catch and step and spin versus the help? Can you facilitate on a roll? Can you catch it, see the help, and then spray it to the opposite corner? So I think all those things now, bigs have to really be two-way guys, but I think their defensive value now is probably as much more important than ever, just because of the way the game is so spread. You're gonna have to go out there and sit down and guard somebody at some point. And so I think that's what's different, so much about the game now. Their defense has to match the evolution of the game offensively.
Same question, Greg. Like, what are your thoughts on where the game is now and the role of the big?
Well, I mean, everything Coach said, I agree with. I just, to add to that, does, his benefits on the court outweigh the negative part, because you look at a guy in Dallas, Boban, if he's going to be in there and take, at least two guards to come in and help, you can give Luka, an extra foot, to get his jump shot off. So, and then he's also going to get you close to 10 rebounds a game, a couple of dunks that you got to worry about. So, if you can look at a guy and you can say, all right, he's going to impact the game a little bit more than he's negatively going to impact the game. Right. They can get out there. But, big thing about these bigs now, you got to be able to spread the floor. I mean, you might not hit the three or shoot the three all the time, but you got to have the confidence enough to take it, just so a guy won't just play off of you all the time so you can open up that floor. And then also, you got bigs, that I like, Montrezl Harrell is one of my favorites, just that energy, that toughness that you're going to bring to the game, because he's not shooting threes that much, but, quick, he's going to go out there and, as Coach said, he's going to guard, but he's also going to be down in the post on the offensive end. So you can impact it different ways. You just got to have that confidence and a little bit of energy to spread the floor and so they can get you out there on the court.
Hey, D. West, I saw you shaking your head when I said Garza, so I'm guessing you had the same. I think it sounded like you had the same questions. About someone like him in particular.
Yeah, he's going to have a great college career, but I just don't think he's going to be able to keep pace. Because I watched him, obviously against Carolina, and then I've watched him a couple times, and just when he misses something in close, he's a 3 or 4 step trail to getting back on defense.
Yeah,
even with his head down. Digging. So I just think that, you add that extra 4 feet in the NBA. Yeah. You add the speed and the fact that, he would have to stop at the 3-point line and potentially, deal with a stretch big, and then have to deal with a pick and roll in transition and deal with
drag is coming.
I just think that's going to be a difficult proposition for him. As good as he is, as solid as he is, because I think he's bigger than. Remember the kid a few years ago that was at Notre Dame, was really good in the post, a little undersized, but really solid footwork, was great in college, but just wasn't going to be able to keep pace in the NBA. And I think Garza falls into that. Great player though. I really like him, and I think he's a good challenge for some of the young guys he's going up against, just because he's such a big body, but. Yeah, I mean, it's the game today, and I probably think a little differently. Like I want Greg Oden to come back. You know what I mean? I want a guy like
Yeah,
a
me
big
too.
that just rolls to the basket.
Yeah.
Because I think that right now that's the biggest gap in the game at every level. If you
No
watch
question.
youth basketball, you watch high school basketball, the paint is usually wide open.
Yeah.
And if you know, but again,
That's why the kid at Purdue's making a killing right
right,
now.
right. They're not, but bigs aren't developing, those skill sets anymore. But I've talked to a couple young guys, and I've said, man, look, if you just want to stand out, be a rim runner right now, because nobody runs to the rim. Everybody runs to the three. So
Yeah, or all the way out to the corner if you're forward.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm like, if you can stand out just by running in the middle of the floor, running rim to rim, old school. So that's a part of the game and part of the evolution of it. What are your thoughts on just sort of where college basketball is right now? We're dealing with the pandemic. We're dealing with some teams playing, some coaches saying we shouldn't play. There was a piece written last week. We shared it internally about some stuff going on I think it was the college football side, where players were dissatisfied with, just the environment now. But, what do you think is the climate right now in college sports?
Well, I don't think it should surprise anybody that money is still in the driver's seat.
Right.
You wish that player well-being and safety and health and what truly should matter was in the driver's seat, but it's kind of in the back seat right now, and the things that matter are in the back seat, hoping that the money in the driver's seat doesn't wreck the car. And so, I've got a lot of buddies in the game still, and I try to stay in touch with a lot of them. And I've gotten mixed reactions because I kind of asked them what they think. I'd say probably the majority of them are leaning towards, this is probably not the right thing to do. And, I think you're just seeing the cases mount right now just because I think who was it, Georgetown, I think, just shut down yesterday. I know Missouri did the other day, and I text Conzo Martin just saying, hey, I hope everything's okay. His response was, thanks, coach, appreciate you. This COVID thing is no joke, ... And so, I think we're running in simple mathematics now. More games plus more contact across the board is going to equal more cases.
Right.
And so, you wish that there was a governing body besides the NCAA, or maybe that was a part of internally within the NCAA that had maybe a checks and balances thing where they could say, hey, look, we really need to put this back under the microscope.
Right.
But I don't know if that's much of an answer, but I think it shouldn't surprise anybody that things are still pushing forward. And because let's face it, I mean, you'd like to call it amateurism, but it isn't. The fact that these guys are on campus by themselves. Greg and I remember we were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago, G. They're employees.
Right.
But
we've seen a couple coaches, Coach Capel said something to that effect.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple other coaches basically say things to that effect. So I don't think you're off base in that. I mean, that's the reality that we're looking at.
Yeah. I wonder how many more guys feel it and just are maybe a little nervous to say it if they're, maybe from their athletic director or for their president. I'm sure there's more guys out there that feel that way, but they're just almost saying, hey, I'd rather just spit out the company line right now just for the sake of keeping it moving.
And speaking of the college game, so I guess first as a tag-along question to what David just said, Greg, I know that you've worked a little bit in the mental health space and making sure that athletes take that part seriously as well. How do you think this environment impacts a college athlete? As Coach Major said, being isolated, being on their own with the exception of their teammates and their coaching staff. Obviously, that can be a good situation sometimes for people just to be hyper-focused. But at the same time, I feel like you need the rest of your life to be the best person you can be.
I think, as a college kid, I mean, I personally would be frustrated as they were just talking, they're employees now. If you're coming here thinking you're going to have the college experience and play basketball and be the man on campus, and now you can't even see those benefits. You can't even see nobody. You would be a little frustrated. And then these kids are 19, 20, 18 sometimes. They really don't understand that dedication. I would say the guys that come out at the end of it, it would be so fulfilling to go through a whole year with all the ups and downs. When you see Alabama, everything they've been through to win that national championship, you really feel for them because they've basically been in the bubble,
Yeah.
the whole year. But as a college kid, you're not getting paid for this. And you're like, I got to be in the bubble. I can't go out and enjoy myself with my friends. That has tough. And, as a kid, I definitely would feel for them in that way. But understand this is teaching them a lesson, that dedication, striving for something with your teammates, that teamwork and all the skills you're going to get after this year is going to be something that they're going to learn and cherish for the rest of their lives.
So the other part of my question now related to the college game, and obviously we got a little bit of a unique situation, Coach Mage having coached David and recruited Greg. This will be for both of you, and Greg, maybe we can start with you. But take us through what that recruitment process is like within the college game from a player perspective, Greg, and then Coach Mage going after that elite prospect, how that really works, especially in the setting of like an Ohio State.
Well, for me, it was pretty easy. I had somebody who I relied upon in my life, and Mike Conley Sr., who basically handled all that. All I had to do was show up and play basketball. But, it did start to get weird when I started traveling all over the country, and I realized Coach Mata was everywhere from that morning workout to all the way across country in the gym at 8 in the morning, not saying nothing to me, just standing there with a shirt on, cup of coffee, just making sure I see him. So that's always the fun part. But, I was blessed to have Mike Conley Sr. and my mom and all of them work together to make sure that it wasn't so much pressure on me. Just go out there and play basketball.
Yeah, we got spoiled with his recruitment because Coach Mata pretty much ran the show with Mike Sr. And so as assistants, we would chip in and got in where we fit in, but it was really Coach Mata and Mike Sr. as far as Greg's situation. And I think the best recruiting situations, there's a solid circle that pretty much built a force field around it. And they just say, hey, everybody's speaking the same language. We're going to dance the same step like the Temptations. Nobody's going to step outside the circle and see what's in it for them. Greg's situation had no one like that. Everybody was on the same page. Obviously, I think a lot of more normal situations are different because, what's going on now is when you're going to have an elite guy try to come, there's two things, and you're starting to see this in football, really. Do I have a chance to win a national championship? Secondly, and usually it's, do I have a chance to get to the NBA? And so most elite guys are going to want one or two of those things. And again, you're seeing that in football, which is a lot of reason why a lot of guys opt out as soon as they realize they're not in the running for a bowl CFP playoff situation. They're moving on. But I think the relationship piece now is probably as strong more than ever. And you really have to paint a vision for guys. It can't be just, well, we'd like to have you because you're good. I think you got to take it one step further and say, okay, even if you're going to be here for 9 months, that was the case with Greg, we still got to challenge you and get you better as if you're going to be, we got to treat you like a 4-year guy. And we got to try to develop you like a 4-year guy, even though you're only going to be a 9-month guy. And so that, I think all that has to be sold in the process, not just, come here because we're Gonzaga or because we're Duke or whatever it is. I think you got to paint a picture and you have to do an unbelievable job communicating with everybody in that circle because some circles are probably still pretty solid. But I think in general, circles have gotten bigger because you got agents sometimes in circles. You got, runners and guys that are kind of facilitating things in circle. You got Uncle Bobo that might have played in junior college, he got something to say sometimes. So, it's just part of it. It is what it is. So you got to do a tremendous job really communicating with everybody in the circle in today's game.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, what are your thoughts on just the environment? Now, is the environment different? Say when you started, and I know you got the shoe circuits and all those things. So how is recruiting? How has it changed? With the shoe circuits and more events, more players spread out, pockets of talent. So how does that all work?
Yeah, there was a time where you could maybe go through just the high school coach as far as getting your information that you need. And now, again, with more voices involved, you got to find out right off the bat, okay, who are the trigger pullers or who are the decision makers in this deal? And then the other side of it, as you just said, is really, really competitive, and it starts in high school. I mean, if a guy's a really good top 25 sophomore, there's going to be somebody that's either affiliated with Nike or Adidas or whatever the case may be. They're going to find out, okay, how can we see this he's tracking to be a potential lottery guy. So that part becomes a factor of, okay, is he going to be an EYBL circuit guy, or is he going to be on the Adidas circuit guy, and what type of things may the family need to help this situation, foster along, because that's a relationship part. So yeah, I think that's probably the single biggest thing over time that's changed is the shoe piece, because there's obviously who you're running with in the summer creates a form of exposure,
right.
Whether it's the Peach Jam stuff and all that. So, I guess the word necessary evil,
Right.
You hate to use it to maybe that extreme, but it is what it is. And so all these factors figure in, when you're trying to get involved with a guy, what's the circle like? Who are the trigger pullers? What shoe people are involved. Sometimes a guy will be on a shoe circuit and things don't go well, and then the second half of the summer he's running with another group.
Right.
So it's kind of more of an amoeba, shape-shifting situation now, more so than it was in the past.
Hey, Greg, I know you mentioned what you're up to a little bit these days, and I wanted to circle back to this in terms of the financial literacy work that you're doing with athletes and being an athlete advisor. It was with EduCorp, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing there to help athletes out.
Yeah, so we work with athletes and entertainers just about the importance of financial literacy. A lot of these guys sometimes lose money, get involved in bad deals. I mean, from my own experience, I talk about how I really didn't pay attention as much as I should have while I was playing. David can attest to this. When that check's coming, you feel like you're good, and you honestly need to talk to your financial advisor, make sure your lawyer is looking over stuff, just making sure that everybody's on the same page and you have checks and balances. So from my standpoint, I basically talk about my experiences, from retiring a little bit earlier and then, looking back at my books and realizing, hold on, I don't have as much as I thought I had when I got done. Just the importance of being involved in everything you do financially is kind of what I talk about on my end. And then we have, a financial expert to come in and talk about, the details of stuff that, I don't have the degree to do yet. But, we work together well, and definitely getting to young athletes and entertainers, because we're the ones that's going to have that short period of time to make a lot of money. And it usually doesn't last a lifetime, but we try to give them the tools to make it last as long as possible.
Before I get to the last two questions, the only other question I would have for both of you guys is just, as I know, Greg, you have thoughts and aspirations of being a coach one day. Coach Made, you've coached already. What do you guys think about, the Black coaching dilemma? Because it's always something that, is always talked about. Maybe a month or so ago, as progressive as the WNBA appears to be, they hired their first Black coach. They have one black female head coach, and she was hired a month ago, maybe, or 2 months ago. So what do you?
And
What do
then
you?
one black male, right? The guy in Chicago.
I don't.
Yeah, there's one black male,
So
guy
there's
named
two,
James. There's two, yeah.
right?
James Wade, I think, is the guy in Chicago.
Right. So even in a league like the WNBA that is seen as a progressive league, you still have, but it is a predominantly black league.
Right.
You still have a lack of black head coaches. So what are your thoughts? We typically like to get. We've had a couple guys on here who are, I think, aspiring to be coaches, and we've asked that question just about the landscape being a black coach.
I mean, for me, the landscape in coaching just reflects our landscape in society.
Right.
I mean, it's a direct reflection of it. And so the thing I try to maybe share with young guys that I know that are, coming up and what I try to tell them is, you can't control your complete path. Obviously, you got to maintain this idea. Yeah, I do want to strive to be twice as good, knowing that I may only get half the opportunities. So you got to deal with that proportion because that proportion's real.
Right.
But they have to always say, don't let people just pencil you in as a recruiter or the relationship guy. Or the guy on the staff that kind of keeps the fellas in line or whatever the case may be. Like, you got to expand your game as an assistant coach. You got to treat it just like a player. You got to add one thing to your coaching toolbox every year. So if you maybe aren't as dialed in as in recruiting on the staff, then you've got to step out and try to develop some of your own recruiting relationships. So now you've added something. Then that next year, maybe it's, I need to do better. I need to be a better guy in terms of the court with skill development. Well, then that's another thing. Then another year might be, communication. Another year it might be how thorough I am with my scouting stuff. So I think, especially as black coaches, you got to be a truth teller to yourself and say, how can I take another notch in my belt and improve? So now when my time comes and my opportunity comes, knowing that window might be tighter than others.
Right.
But I've got to make sure that I'm not just focusing on being a head coach. I'm focusing on being a really, really good coach.
Right.
And then when I get a chance to be a head coach, I'm already going to be well-rounded and developed and ready to roll. So part of it is controllable, but there's a societal piece. This is America, I mean, it is what it is. So I don't know how to change that. I wish I did. I think one thing is, I think schools have to make sure that more African Americans are in decision-making positions that will open the door for guys to have more opportunity. So until that day comes, you got to round yourself out like a player. And be on training camp mode every off season and add one thing to your coaching game. So now you're as well-rounded as you can be when that phone does ring.
Yes, I'll just go from piggyback off of everything Coach said. I think networking is a big part of it as well. When I was first started looking for coaching opportunities, I would get the people go, I like you, but you don't have any coaching opportunities. And the more I kept hearing that, the more I was like, well, how the hell am I ever going to get a coaching opportunity if nobody's going to give me? I'm going to get the experience. It gives me the opportunity.
Yeah, chicken or the egg. Yeah. Chicken or the egg.
But I think, I guess, to go on to like the black coaches, I mean, for me, a number one draft pick, a former professional player, I get done, I graduate college, and I'm sitting here like, okay, I got my coaching degree. Where's the job at? I didn't know what I needed to do, who I needed to be around. So I think, at a young age, people learning how to network. I got, a bunch of people on my phone, that got money, got connections, but, have I been, keeping in contact with them, just sending them a random message just to, keep me in the back of their minds. That's something that I think a lot of people don't really have that skill. And I think if you, kind of did that a little bit more at a younger age, you'd be better at it when these opportunities come about. You won't have to just reach out to somebody for the first time just because they got a job opening. They'll already be thinking about you because you've already kept that relationship going. And I just think that's very important to a lot of people. And no matter if it's basketball, but a lot of opportunities, a lot of positions of power that, if you're there, people will help you out if they know you, if they're still talking to you and understand that that's what you want to do.
I've got one more question, and it's real simple. It's just about routine. So for our young listeners, what can you share with them about your daily routines, particularly what you do in the morning? And do you believe in waking up in the morning? One of the things I always try to tell young brothers is, man, y'all got to wake up. You're sleeping too late in the day, man. And I used to be like that when I was in college, but I got out of it pretty quick. I especially when I first got to college, I was trying to sleep until 11 or 12, but then you're like, I'm wasting time. Things got to get done. So, I'm really big on routines and particularly how you start your day. So for our audience, can you share if you have one? If you don't, it's cool. But if either both of you guys can respond, what your routine is? What are the things that you do every day to start your day to sort of get you focused and get you moving in the right direction so the day can be productive?
Go ahead, G. You can start that one.
So I'm Aquarius, but my birthday is on the 22nd of January. And so my wife kept telling me, she's like, I swear you're a Capricorn. And so we started reading some of the little things, and I promise you, like the first one I read, it was me to a T for a Capricorn. And so I say that to say one thing that I started doing, Capricorns are very organized. So lately I've been getting up and making sure I have a checklist of things that I wanted to do during the day. Because when I get up and I actually make that checklist, I actually get that stuff done. The days where I just kind of go and whatever happens, happens. I kind of look up and like the easiest thing I could have did today, it's already 7, so I can't even do that now, But I have a checklist every morning and know kind of the things I want to accomplish in the day. I actually always get those things done. And as I said earlier, I got a 4-year-old, so I'm up at 6 making breakfast. Making sure everybody's good to go. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, for me, without having a 4-year-old, I'm pretty much responsible for myself. But
that's
I usually try to. Right. Depends on what day it is. Exactly. I try to wake up and I usually write down the stuff that I want to do the night before. So even though right now I don't have there's not an employment routine to follow, I still use a planner. And I'll jot down whatever I need to do, even starting with what time I wake up. And usually when I wake up and I'll meditate, for about 10 minutes a day. There's an app that I use called Headspace. I know there's some different ones out there. I think LeBron uses one called Calm, which is another one. And that's not about just doing anything mystical at all. That's just, quiet in my head, just clearing my head, breathing, and just making sure that I'm not flying full blast into the day. It's a way to slow down before you start up. So it's almost like you're starting your engine, but you're just kind of, it's like the guys before the Indy 500. They're just sitting there, engines are rolling, and then when they wave the flag, you're ready to go. So, and then I take a little time spiritually, 10, 15 minutes, nothing crazy, but just from a faith perspective, that's important to me. And then I'll go get a workout, have a protein shake, and then after that, I'll get going on anything that I jotted down. So that pretty much is, except Sundays. I usually take Sundays and just kind of chill. But that's pretty much a 6-day-a-week deal. And what it helps you do, and it's that phrase, either you're going to control the day or the day is going to control you. And that's probably the message, D. West, that you're trying to share to guys, especially, guys that, they roll out of bed at 12, 1 o'clock and then head right to the facility. It's like, come on now. Like, there's got to be something that, just to wake up and I always like guys that showed up to the facility early.
Right.
It wasn't just because they were there that early. It's because their minds were in the facility early.
Right.
Their minds were going way ahead of them walking into the building.
Right.
And so it's just it's something that now I'm actually glad when there's really nothing going on. It's actually the best time to do it, because you probably went through this when you were, right when you retired, like, there's nowhere to be,
Right.
like.
But I'm like Greg, man. We messed around and had a 1-year-old, so hey, we got a 1-year-old right now. So I ain't slept in 2 years. Sure. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, I think it's huge, and the sooner guys do it, the sooner guys learn it.
Right.
Especially if you're a high school guy. I used to love to tell players, you can be a professional before you become a pro.
Right.
You don't have to be a pro in terms of getting a check in order to be a professional.
Right.
You can be a professional in your sophomore year in high school in terms of the way you handle your business. So having a routine is a huge part of all that.
Absolutely.
Love that. Well, guys, really appreciate your time. We are definitely excited to continue to work with you guys. And I think this is a great episode.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. Coach, great answers. Greg, I appreciate your responses as well, man. We really appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And wish you guys and your families all the best.
Yeah. You guys too, man. Stay safe.
Absolutely.
We got a long way to go to staying over
Yeah,
yet.
absolutely.
We're not out of the woods by any stretch.
Oh,
No. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Forward Thinking, presented by the Professional Collegiate League, co-hosted by David West and Ricky Vellante, produced by Wendell Haskins, Rafa Hernandez Brito, and Ricky Vellante, and the music is done by David West. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe Forward Thinking on your favorite podcast platform and the PCL YouTube channel. You can also get more information on the PCL at thepcleague.com, on Twitter at @_PC League, and on Instagram at the PC League. We appreciate y'all continuing to tune in. Hope everybody's staying safe. We'll see y'all next week.